Greetings, everybody. This is Ashley Sequeira, and I'll be taking you through a day in the life of a ticket. Today, we're going to cover a few different things. Now, the reason you're probably here is to learn more about Censys, so we'll start there. I am going to hyper-focus a little bit today, and I usually will always do a tour of the UI. It will be very brief today because I think what a lot of us are missing working in security operations, working in the SOC, incident response, threat intelligence, how do we make sure that the information that our first line of defense, our SOC analysts, how do we make sure that information is the right information that those analysts pass on to the IR team? And how do we make sure that the IR team has what they need to then pass on to the threat intelligence team? There should be a cycle when we talk about security operations and threat intelligence. And so where Censys fits in a lot of these conversations are actually in a few of the places that are the most critical to being able to make the most informed decision about an alert you might see, especially sitting in the SOC. So again, we'll talk about API functionality. I'm going to take us through scenario 1, which is looking at the ticket from the purview of the SOC. And within that ticket, what data from Censys can help a SOC analyst determine good, bad, or escalate. We'll then talk about kind of what could help an incident response analyst or incident response, participant. And this is a little different because while incident response does, of course, very much depend and really drive their workflows and the things that they care about based on the information they get from the SOC, how do we, again, make sure that the SOC is able to both retrieve that enrichment data that they need and make sure that the enrichment data contains the right information that the incident responders can benefit from? And then finally, we'll look at this from a threat intelligence perspective. We've already gone through our first line of defense. We've escalated our alert to an actual incident. We've engaged and activated our incident responders. So now we need our threat intelligence functionality and our threat intelligence team members to then take what we've garnered from that investigation. It could be IOCs. It could be, heck, just hashes. It could be JARM fingerprints. A lot of different things do fall into this category. But again, how do we take the data that you can only really get and benefit from within Censys and take that to the threat intelligence team so they can be awesome at what they do? And then finally, we'll do a quick wrap up. I'll, of course, provide some additional follow-up information, some contact information, and just some additional information to help you get started or to learn more about Censys and some of our other parts of our portfolio. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Let's take some time and talk about Censys platform. Now, today, we're going to focus primarily on Censys platform. And when we say Censys platform, we mean our internet search. So this is like the Google of the internet. We can support security operations. We can, of course, support threat hunting. We can support incident response, threat research, and reporting, as well as cyber reconnaissance. And so what kind of stuff do we include when we start to look at these different things? Now, hosts, certificates, and web properties are usually where we start. So you perform a query. We're looking at, millions of hosts, millions of certificates, millions of web properties. Now, another function that's huge are these collections. Now, collections are awesome, and I'll touch on these when we actually look at the UI a little bit later. But collections are great because this allows you to actually group and track certain sets of IPs, domains, certificates, like whatever's interesting to you, whatever query needs to be tracked, you can do that with our tool. Now, what I love about our collections as well is that one of the things that they're great about is that it will auto update. So every day you get a little report, you can get weekly updates, you can webhook it, but it tells you, hey, we saw new stuff, or hey, those things we did see, we don't see anymore. Finally, we help you with context. So that could be what's the hardware or the software or the operating system version. That could also be, what's it labeled as? Is it a proxy server? Is it a WAF? Is it a bulletproof hosting provider? All of these are those pieces of information that, again, when you're sitting in the seat as a SOC analyst, you're like, hey, I need this, but how do I go get it? Is it 48 tabs away, or can I do it in one place? Or can I automate it? Now, when we talk about those hosts and certificates, Anything that replies to our scanning via an IP address is treated as a host. Anything that responds to a host name scan is typically treated as a web property because it's responding with an actual like DNS name and all this other stuff. So we also can help you with that certificate transparency as well. And so we have one of the largest X509 certificate repositories in the world. So you have peace of mind that we have a lot of that extra detail and extra information that you all need. Now, when we look at web properties, like I said, this could be an app.example.com at port 443 or port 808 or port 10,011. Whatever the port is, we can actually account for that and we can look at that when we're discussing web properties. So this again could be like websites, web admin interfaces, Elasticsearches, everything that you see here, as well as other things that you don't. Now, I talked about those collections, but again, this allows you to filter the noise and hyper focus on what matters to you. So instead of you having to log into Censys and you're like, man, Censys's data is really cool, but I have to run the same scan over and over and over again, and I have to sit down and I have to type it out every time. No, you do not. We heard you. We want it to be easy. We want it to make more sense. We want to save you time. And so we can help you save time by having collections. So again, you don't run the same queries every day. You can save and you can check on it. You can get an email. You can webhook it. If I really care, about the Huawei software scan option that you see in the slide, then I can just look at that Huawei scan every day and get reports on it every day. Now, the context is important because this helps with things like metadata, like the CPEs, the vendor, the versions, all that kind of stuff. Now, we do have some interesting kind of conversations starting around supply chain risk, but we want to help give you that context because, again, we've all learned and seen more and more, a lot of these breaches aren't coming because someone's knocking on the front door and then kicking it in. They're coming through third parties. They're coming through other entities. They're coming through places that you may not actually have purview over to monitor and check, which is scary. So to get that context is huge. Now, this is kind of a busy slide, but I'll just touch on a couple of things here. This is just a summary. This isn't everything. We index over 1,500 fields when we collect data and then report that back to you through Censys, whether it's through the UI or through the API. Now, just to give you a little bit more exposure so you can understand, again, the robustness of this. You've got your hosting certificates, you've got your web properties. We can help with devices, including IoT and PLCs and the HMIs and all of those OT and kind of SCADA systems that are now, of course, very much a huge target for a lot of our adversaries, even the day you're watching this. Now, login pages, open directories, if it has remote access, these are, again, that's the context that's needed. Because if I'm talking to an external IP and I think it's bad, well, what tells me that it's bad? Is it just that it's an external IP that I don't know about? Are there things about it that kind of give me that feeling as a researcher, as an analyst, as an investigator, that I'm like, I need to dig a little deeper on that? We can look, of course, at ports and exposures, both at standard and non-standard ports. We are one of the only tools that scan all 65,535 ports every single day, multiple times per day, for every single thing on the internet, which is crazy when you think about scale. We can, of course, help with protocols, and we're always adding more, by the way. We can help with different risk signals. So are there CVEs on it? Are there known exploited vulnerabilities? Are they phishing domains? We can tell you that too. Are they C2s? Is it a certain application? Is it a certain context? Again, that context. Are there certain labels or ASNs or other data that I don't necessarily get on that first pass when that alert comes to me from the SIM to tell me, hey, human SOC analyst, I need you to go look at this. Well, I have an IP. What else do I need? So think about that. All right, so for Censys Enterprise, specifically targeting our SOC friends, I just wanted to touch on the fact that we have a huge, robust integrations campaign that is currently in motion. We've got integrations now with Google SecOps, Microsoft, Splunk, or Cisco, depending on who you ask. Of course, all the various kind of big SOARs and OpenCTI, Threat Connect, Maltego, all the other kind of key-ish threat intel platform kind of partners. And we're always growing. We're always adding more. If something's missing or maybe you have a custom solution, when you reach out to have a conversation with us, mention that, because we're always looking for more things that we can prioritize and add so that we can make things easier for you. All right, so I'm going to briefly touch on adversary investigations. So with adversary investigations, I'm a big fan of this as a researcher, but again, we're tracking known threats. Hollywood threats is kind of the other phrase that I've heard used that kind of makes me chuckle. But again, it's to help you automate some of that adversarial investigation. So we're not looking at an internal threat hunt necessarily. We're looking at, okay, I know that, a nation state threat actor is really into the grid right now. Like, the grid is so hot right now, everybody. And because of this, maybe I want to see certain threat actors that might be targeting certain protocols, or maybe I want to see certain threat actors that are known to leverage certain CVEs, vulnerabilities, things like that. Maybe I just want to see what threats are available in a certain country. All of that can be done with our adversary investigations. Now, within the UI, we'll also include these cute little bug icons that you see. Those are actual notifications of threats, and you'll see them on host as you're looking through the Censys data set. And so make sure, and I love to always mention this to my customers as well, make sure that you take a look and just peruse, just look and investigate and see what's available, because you'd be surprised how quickly our research team is able to turn around and get updated signatures out there. So you have that for peace of mind as well. Now, we have built in some additional functionality, which we're going to do through the API today, but you should know that our open source tool Censys has now been built into our threat hunting module within Censys platform. And what this does is it allows you to pivot across the entire Censys data set and look for any commonalities between that host you're looking at and everything else. So maybe you need to find a C2 server, and maybe it's really fascinating to you that there's only 4 hosts on the internet that might have some shared values. Might be worth looking into. Maybe it's related infrastructure. Now, within the tool, you'll see this is what's called Discover Pivots. And as Discover Pivots runs, we look at all of those 1,500 fields, and we look for matching values. We can also, again, help with that threat context. We can do JARM fingerprinting, you can do certificate fingerprinting, and you can pivot on those as well. We can, of course, do on-demand scanning. So if you need us as an abstraction layer, you can totally use us as an abstraction layer. It's not necessarily the best idea to scan things from your house, everybody. So if you need to scan or do some additional investigation, we're great at that because it looks like it's coming from Censys and not from you. We, of course, have certificate and host history. And then we have some different dashboards that you can then explore and leverage. So with that, we're going to pivot and we're going to talk about API functionality. All right, so I've pulled up our docs.censys.com/reference/get-started. So this is to get started with our new Censys APIs. If you are a legacy search user, so Search 2.0 or V2 for the APIs, there are some new base URLs for any of you who are listening and you would like to, again, migrate your V2 to V3. There's a new process to generate your personal access token. You should definitely double check your downstream applications to make sure that there aren't any problems with the API changes. And then definitely take a look at this SDK section because there are some updates from the legacy search SDKs. So the way to get started, your roles do have to be set. You'll need to create a personal access token. Keep them and treat them like passwords. Don't just be posting them all over the internet. You do need your org ID. Definitely make sure you identify your org ID. You do have to kind of configure, a custom header. And part of it is sending the header for the X-organization-ID parameter, which is your org ID. And then you also have to include a header with your new API token. Now, the accept is pretty fascinating, and for my security engineers on the call, you'll love this because if you set up the accept header, it'll make sure to bring the data back in a way that you probably are pretty happy about. Without the accept header, it just brings it back. So I always recommend using at least like a JSON accept header. You should. It does help quite a bit. It makes it at least easier to read. And then you can use things like JQ and stuff like that when you're building your scripts and everything in order to parse that JSON and then make it usable in other places. So you'll make your API calls, and you'll find out pretty quickly, if you do everything right, you should just get a 200 back. Now, if you get any of these 400s or a 500 error, you got to double check and just kind of see what's going on. Usually it's something with like permissions, things like that. The 500 error is us, so definitely call us if there's something going wrong. As far as API rate limits for anyone who's interested, 25 concurrent actions, and then here are the base URLs for those different API endpoints that you'll need in order to leverage the different functionalities of the API. So with that, I'll just very briefly touch on some of the different options over here, and then we'll get to our tickets. So very quickly, like I said, collections are really powerful. You can set these up for a myriad of things. You can get events from a collection. You can just retrieve a particular collection. I did write a different blog last year about using collections as kind of unofficial but official kind of custom threat feeds that you can feed into like a block list on a firewall or some other device. So that's an option that you can use with these. You can, of course, run a search query within those collections. So if you need a certain set of data from within that, you can pull that back. You can update collections. You can, of course, do all of your typical account management stuff, including managing roles. The global data set, probably the most powerful and probably the most ubiquitous to our conversation today, would be things like aggregating results for a search query, getting a certificate, grab a host, grab a web property, do a live rescan. These are all things that you can do via the API with Censys. And then within adversary investigation, this is where you can get access to Censys via the API. This is where you can get status for like scans, threat history for a web property, active threats, things like that. Now, once you get everything set up and you kind of start doing your queries, you have a lot of options for how you want this to work. And so what I actually ended up doing is I set up a little trial Jira instance and I made my little custom fields, and with the help of our dear friend Claude and some elbow grease and some time, I was able to write a little server that can actually query Censys once you provide it an IP or a domain. And then from that query in Censys, it'll use that and populate a Jira ticket. So let's move that way. We're going to start off with our SOC use case. All right, so we have put on our SOC analyst hats, and we receive this alert. We get an ID, we get a timestamp, we get an event type, we get a source IP, we don't have any hostname information, and we don't know the country of origin for this particular IP that we have a host visiting. From the perspective of a SOC analyst, the most important part is absolutely going to be, is this good, is this bad, and do I need to escalate? The faster that question can be answered for a SOC analyst makes their life easier, which then in turn allows them to be better prepared to capture that data needed for the IR team, which then enables the IR team to be able to get and do their job so that they can support threat intelligence, and the circle of life continues in security operations. Now, in scenario 2, this will be a little bit different. I just want to very quickly go over these. You will be an incident responder. You've asked the SOC for germ fingerprints and certificate data if available. You have a requirement to pass on any information that would be relevant to the threat intelligence team. They've asked for threat data, germ fingerprints, and location/geo information. Finally, you're the threat intelligence team. You've been asked to prepare a one-pager on the recently resolved incident that we're about to work through based on the recommendations of the IR team. You require the following information for your report. You need geolocation, ports protocols, infrastructure information, and any recommended actions to be able to articulate kind of their need and impact to stakeholders. So now that we have all these different scenarios, we kind of know the 3 roles. let's go take a look at our SOC use case and the ticket. All right, so we're going to make our first API call and kick off the workflow for the SOC use case. I'm using curl because I'm talking to my local server running on HTTP. I'm using that -X. You can see I have a content type specified for application/JSON, and then I specified a target IP, and I put in a little note of live demo with real census data. So let's see what happens when we run this. Great, so I have a bunch of hideous looking data, and you can again see that there's a lot going on, but right here I got a ticket number of web-141. So let's quickly go take a look at that. All right, so I'm in Jira, and as you can see here, we just created a SOC alert or a ticket for that SOC alert with that IP that we had specified previously. So if I open this bad boy up, you can see that I get the hosting provider, the ASN, our country code, location ports, that JARM fingerprint that was so desperately required. And then again, there's no certificate hash for this, but if there was one, you would get that here. Now, what's the next use case? So we know that we're in the SOC. We've already seen that we can auto-enrich. We've got, a chunk of this data already provided and ready to go. So now the next thing we need to do is we need to escalate. Now I've already ran the IR escalation workflow just so we can keep things moving here. But if you look right here, I now have a ticket number for web-142. So if I come back to Jira and I back out here just one screen, if I clear this filter, I should hopefully see, ticket 142. Now let's see if this actually did pass the data, and it looks like it did. So we've got, of course, our IP, our ASN, our hosting, our location, those ports, and that JARM fingerprint that was so desperately required by various other teams. Now, finally, we already have that other flow ready to go, and so now the threat intelligence report has been generated. So if I pop in here, I can see, again, very rudimentary, more so just to show the capability, but you can see here I've got a target, a report date, I've got that infrastructure information that was required for our use case, I've got that fingerprint, I've got some certificate information, I've got some attribution notes, so again, it got escalated from this other incident, and then I've got some historical host information. Again, very, very simple, straightforward use case just to show some basic extraction with some APIs. But again, think about the power of the actual census data set. Over 1,500 fields, tons of information. With our threat and adversarial intelligence module add-on, you can get even additional threat information, especially if you're a threat intelligence team or an IR team, and requires some more details depending on how your incident response looks and operates. Now, the last thing we'll cover is how you can get started with Censys. If you navigate over to Censys.com, you'll be greeted with our recently redesigned website, and you'll see that there's a Get Started Now button or a Request Demo button. Both are great, but if you want to go ahead and get hands on the tool, you can click on the Get Started button. You'll notice that you'll be brought to, again, this is Censys platform. Now, granted, this is a limited data set, but you can, again, take a quick basic jaunt just to see, what's out there, what kind of stuff you can see. And then if you'd like to set up a free account, you can actually click register and you'll be able to set up a free account. Yes, you can do social signing with Google. If you do end up going with Censys later down the road, we do also support SSO. But once you make an account, you'll be able to log in and conduct queries. As for final thoughts, remember, your incident response is only as good as the data that your incident responders, your SOC, and your threat intelligence teams can leverage. We have some of the freshest data out there. We scan the most frequently. We scan often. We scan all 65,535 ports multiple times per day on every host and host name on the internet. So you know that when you're making a decision, it can be an informed one. Thank you again so much for attending today. If there's any final questions or any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to us here at Censys. We can't wait to hear from you. Thank you again so much, everybody.